took me 5 years to become sub 10. Now I know some people who it took longer than that, but I also know some people who it only took 1 or 2 years. Now in the past 5 years of my cubing life, I've made a few mistakes, and I've tried my best to try and recognize them. So in this video, I'll give you the best tips that I can offer to become sub 10, and I'll try to prevent you from making the same mistakes that I did. Here's how to become sub 10 on 3x3. So here's a couple prerequisites. Before you try learning these tips, I highly encourage you to know full OLL and PLO. Now sure, some people were able to reach sub 10 without full OLL, but are you really gonna wait? Anyways, just a recommendation. Now my last prerequisite is to know the basic F2L algs. Now this is something I struggled with because before I learned too many fancy F2L algorithms, and when I find them in solves, I use that fancy F2L algorithm when I could have easily used the basic F2L algorithm. Now not all of you have this problem, but it's always good just to make sure. So I recommend this video from JPerm, and especially this one from LaserMonkey. Anyways, that was long, and on to the first tip. Now this first tip is a bit more routine based rather than solving specific, but this is something that has helped me a lot, especially when I was averaging like 11 seconds. So my first tip to become sub 10 is to do casual solves. Now I know a lot of you are doing countless timeless solves. Not all of you, but a lot of you. And that's not the best way to go. And here's why. The fact that you're trying to reach sub 10, it means that you're doing some things wrong with your solves, meaning you have some bad habits. Now, if you're doing constant timed solves, you're letting those bad habits stick to your head even more. And when they stick to your head, it becomes harder to learn new things and basically harder to get rid of those bad habits. Now, you probably expect me to say something like do slow solves, and that's partially true, but I recommend casual solves. What I mean by that is when you're watching TV, watching YouTube, or traveling in a car, or just randomly sitting on your couch, pull out a cube and start doing solves. And please, without a timer. Now do not go as fast as you can, go slow. Now here's what has helped me so much. Now when you're doing these casual solves, try find new algorithms, whether it be F2L or just a new cross solution. It could be anything. And let me tell you, I've learned so many new things by doing this. Now don't only take it from me, because one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is because I saw a very old interview with Felix Zemdegs, and here's what he said.
Solve than what most other people can. I solve cubes every day, but I don't sit down and like practice to and record times every day. And basically it just comes down to practice. Even if that's just solving cube while you're just doing everyday stuff.
Now here's why it has helped me so much. Now I'm not a scientist or anything like that, but I almost feel like if you're learning new algorithms and solutions by yourself and not through sources like YouTube, you're much more likely to implement them into your solves. Now I don't know if that's true, but it definitely was for me. Now of course you're not going to learn everything from doing this, and you're still going to have to learn some stuff from sources like YouTube. So here's what I recommend. Now what I recommend are walkthrough solves, because you can learn a lot of F2L algorithms from that. Now if you're watching these walkthrough solves and you see a cuber use a fancy F2L algorithm, you can learn it, but sometimes you can be a bit too impressed by those algorithms that you start to overuse it. So just keep that in mind when you're learning through these walkthrough solves. So basically what I'm saying is you can still do timed solves if you want, but also try add some casual solves into your routine, and also try watch some videos on YouTube about how to improve. Okay, so that was a pretty long tip, but now we're going to transition to a more solving specific tip. So my second tip is to learn F2L cases from different positions. And here's some examples. Okay, so here's a little example. So we have this F2L case, and usually when I see this from this position, you could do this. Now let's say we have the same case, but from behind. Of course, we could just do this. And now it's in the back. But let's say we have it in this position. We could do this. That's in the back. Now here's a couple other examples. So we have this case where usually if you're holding it in this position, you can do this. Like that. But let's say you're doing it on the back, you could just do this. And now here's another tip within a tip, and that is to make use of your free slots. And here's an example. Now let's say you have this case in this position, like, and it goes in this back slot right here, and this slot is free. You could just, you know, R prime and then just insert it in the back. And yeah, and you couldn't have done that if this slot was not, you know, open. And just other simple things that you might know already, like this case, since this slot is free, you could just do this. And yeah, just things like that. So yeah, just those things and just making use of free slots and doing things in different positions, it's gonna help you a lot. And if you're gonna have trouble like finding these kind of algorithms, that's when those casual solves will come into play. Because for me, casual solves is what helped me find those algorithms. And of course, you could do walkthrough solves or just learn other things. But mainly, it's always good to learn things yourself. It also applies to what I said in the beginning and just knowing the basic F2L algorithms, and especially knowing them intuitively, because if you know them intuitively, it's going to help you perform algorithms at a different position. So yeah. Now if you know only one algorithm for a certain F2L case, you'll find yourself rotating the cube a lot just to perform that algorithm. So yeah, this is also something that really helped me, and I highly recommend it for you guys. Now my third tip is to learn cross plus 1, which you're probably going to hear a lot when you're trying to reach sub 10. But if you don't know what I mean, here's some examples. So basically, cross plus 1 means that you have planned your cross and your first F2L pair in inspection. Now instead of solving the cross and first pair, I think all you need to remember is to know where your first F2L pieces are after you solve the cross. And here's an example. Okay, so I usually do green cross, but I'm going to do white since most of you do white. So what we're going to do is, we're going to do an F prime for the blue, and then a B prime and an L for the orange, which will also bring this green piece to its center, and then do a D prime, and then do an R and U2. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to track this green and orange edge piece, and this corner piece. Okay, so this is gonna end up right here, I believe, and this is gonna end up right here on this spot. So let's just try it. F prime, B prime, L, D prime, R, F2, and yes, this ended up here and this over there. We can just insert it into the back. Now, a way to learn things like this is to do it blindfolded, yet usually things that involve the cross, it is sometimes good just to try practice these things blindfolded, and also, of course, you can implement them into your casual solves. Anyways, cross plus 1, highly recommend it, and I hope it will help you reach sub 10. Now my fourth tip is a bit more routine based like the first tip, and it is to learn big cubes. Now, why should you learn big cubes? Well, think of this. In big cubes, both efficiency and look ahead are the main things you need to improve on when you're solving big cubes. Now, let's focus on that look ahead. So, on a 5x5, there are much more pieces on a 5x5 than on a 3x3, obviously. So, when you're looking for a specific piece, it's going to be much more harder since there are more pieces on a big cube. So, when you're constantly solving big cubes, it should gradually be getting easier to look for those pieces, and basically you're gradually improving your look ahead. Now let's say you've been solving big cubes constantly and then you switch to 3x3. The look ahead you've improved on the big cubes are going to be used during 3x3, and thus making your look ahead on 3x3 better, and you'll be getting better times. Now, don't just do like a few averages and then go back to 3x3 and expect to get better times. No, I just recommend you add big cubes to your cubing routine. Now, all big cubes are good for this, but I recommend Megaminx. Now, Megaminx has taught me a lot. Now, one thing is that you need to use inspection wisely. Now, since there's a star rather than a cross, you need to track one extra piece during inspection in order to complete that star. And lastly, there are so many ways to do F2L or S2L on Megaminx. And from the few F2L tricks that I've learned on Megaminx, I find myself actually using on 3x3 as well. So I highly recommend Megaminx, but of course, other big cubes will work as well. Anyways, those are all my tips to help you get to sub 10, and I really hope you achieve it. I also want to end off by encouraging you to always keep a positive mindset and to never give up. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at CatDeCuber. Thanks for watching guys. Bye.
Bye.